Hello, we're in front of the pantry right now. Just had something to eat, got some honey, got some salt, got some other stuff in there. But that's not what we're here for. We are here to talk about crypto news. That's right. And first up, we have the SEC suing Robinhood. Robinhood robs from the rich, gives to the poor. Gary Gensler doesn't rob from the rich and give to the poor. He robs everyone and doesn't give to anyone. But he has sent Robinhood a Wells notice, and that means they could be liable to be sued by the SEC. So the SEC warned Robinhood Markets Incorporated that it faces an enforcement action over its crypto business, the latest sign that the regulator isn't letting up on its years-long crackdown on digital assets. Of course, Robinhood is best known for stock trading, but it added cryptos a few years ago, and it's been a pretty prominent part of the business. And the shares rose 2.8% despite the SEC suing it because no one's really afraid of the SEC anymore. People used to be terribly afraid of the SEC. Whenever they sued, it went way down, but now they're not so afraid of it anymore. The company will have the opportunity to respond to the SEC's allegations before the regulator takes any action. Sometimes the response persuades the SEC to back off. If not, then the regulator can sue or settle with Robinhood to resolve the probe. And usually they do sue, but their record in lawsuits is not that great. So I think they're essentially trying to use this as a scare tactic to make people back off. But big, well-funded companies like Robinhood are probably not going to back off from the SEC. I highly doubt they're going to back off because why would they back off at this point? They know that the SEC can be beaten and has been beaten, and they're not exactly afraid of Gary Gensler anymore. So I think the SEC is losing its scare advantage on companies like Robinhood. So the SEC under Gary Gensler has argued that most tokens are subject to SEC rules, but it seems like the judges heavily disagree with that assessment. And they're basically telling the SEC, no, that may not be true. And the SEC does not want to fight this many companies because they might run short on funding, and Congress is not looking too friendly on giving them more funding. And of course, like their other lawsuits aren't going well, so people want to know that you can actually win, but they're not winning. So that's another problem. Now, there was an article that says the SEC keeps on scoring wins, and they use examples like Coinbase failing to get the SEC lawsuit thrown out. But I don't really know who's been doing research on such articles because that's not true. The SEC is definitely not winning right now. They are losing pretty badly and pretty handily at this specific point. And realistically, not really sure how you can say that after they lost the Ripple case. And more than that, they also lost, like they also like, I think they're the ones that like prompted some of these companies to actually sue Coinbase, but all the companies have actually started losing against Coinbase, which weakens the SEC case. Now, one of the reasons they want to sue Robinhood is because they think Robinhood will back down, and if companies back down, it makes it easier for the SEC to sue other companies. So that's what they're going for right now. But I don't think Robinhood's actually going to fall for it because Robinhood is a thief and he steals from the rich and gives to the poor. And you don't want to mess with people that steal from the rich and give to the poor. So Robinhood, the CEO, says he's very disappointed in Gary Gensler, which he should be. We're all very, very disappointed in Gary Gensler because we thought he would actually know better, but he's kind of tried to make this a political statement to further his political career. But I don't actually think it's actually going to work for him. Some congressmen have even called Gary Gensler a rogue regulator. Also, another glorious win that they didn't mention for the SEC is the SEC actually got itself sanctioned against a crypto company in the debt box case. So they are definitely not winning all the way, and they keep on taking L's at this point. So I might be a little bit biased, but I see all the L's the SEC has taken. The cracks are there in the armor, and there are many, many of them. Of course, like the SEC does actually use the Howey test, but the Howey test has really not been coming out all that much in their favor. And of course, I think the SEC is just sending Wells notices, hoping that Robinhood will give in to their demands. But I don't think Robinhood will, which means another lawsuit for the SEC. And I think like the SEC has been sending some Wells notices, but sometimes they don't really take action because they already have a lot on their plate. And they know that all these lawsuits are basically on the same thing. So if they lose one lawsuit, they're going to lose the rest of the lawsuits. And right now, as Robinhood is a very important piece of the crypto, of the business that the platform has, I doubt they'll give it up so easily. So not really sure what to think there. But the SEC is still going rogue and suing all these crypto companies. And as for saying the SEC is going rogue, we have a U.S. congressman calling out SEC Chair Gary Gensler and calling him a rogue regulator. So this guy is John Rose. He's a congressman from Tennessee's 6th congressional district, and he's very strongly critical of the SEC's action against Robinhood. The congressman called the SEC and its chair, Gary Gensler, rogue regulators in a recent post on X. And if you follow X, if you actually follow X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, Congressman John Rose, the SEC exceeded its mandate to protect investors and maintain fair, orderly markets by issuing a Wells notice to Robinhood app, a precursor to enforcement action. I'm proud to help lead the effort to provide clarity by passing FIT for the 21st Century Act, and so the rogue regulators like Gary Gensler can focus on mandate to protect investors and not disrupt innovation. And he's not the only one. And it's a bipartisan effort to question Gary Gensler. Yes, there are more Republicans than Democrats that want to question Gary Gensler, but that's more of a political thing. The fact that there are actually Democrats on crypto's side is actually signaling that this issue is actually way more of a bipartisan issue that both parties can actually agree to than most other issues. So definitely it's not going well for Gary Gensler. So basically the SEC is under fire for threatening enforcement action against Robinhood's crypto arm, and Robinhood is probably a part of those lobbyists. So when agencies have to fight against lobbyists, they generally may not fare all that well. He's one of the number of high-profile figures that have voiced strong opposition to the agency's move. Obviously, crypto figures like Chervinsky have also criticized the SEC's move. The number they've sent about crypto in recent months is astonishing. It's hard to imagine that they would or could bring so many enforcement actions at once. It seems like they're abusing the Wells process as a scare tactic now. And I think there's a chance that Congress kind of like retracts or kind of like limits the SEC's, use of this tactic if they're actually just abusing it as a scare tactic, because that's not the way regulation is going to work. Like I said, they're trying to use it as a scare tactic because they don't want to fight all these lawsuits at once, and they know that if they can get a lot of other companies to go along, then it makes their other lawsuits much, much easier. So the SEC allocates a grossly disproportionate amount of its resources to crypto, given that its actual purpose is to regulate equity and debt markets. Gensler wants to make his stamp on the world, and he wants the SEC to gain regulation over crypto. That's where he wants to establish his credibility, but I think it's really, really hurting him. So we have a bit of a problem here with SEC Chair Gary Gensler. I think all of us knew that, but I think it's even greater than what most people actually think that Gary Gensler is actually doing. So yeah, Gensler is facing a lot of trouble from congressmen and crypto companies. They're not backing off anymore, and I think he's actually getting kind of nervous. So he's just trying to sue everything that he can to try to gain any semblance of credibility. But I do actually think that the courts are actually locking him down, and he's essentially just trying to buy time. His allies are probably doing that as well because Elizabeth Warren, Brad Sherman, and co. really dislike crypto for whatever reason. And they're trying to get Gary Gensler to put the stops on crypto. But putting the stops on crypto is getting to be a lot harder than they actually thought. There's a lot of support against it, both political and just among the people. And I think it'll end up being a losing issue for the Democratic Party in future elections. And they will have no choice but to pay attention to what crypto investors want. Because I don't think any crypto investor thinks that Gary Gensler is actually protecting crypto investors from anything. In fact, the SEC is hurting us way more. Most of us just want the cycle to continue going on. Most of us just want the cycle to do its thing. And realistically, we just want Gary Gensler and co. to kind of leave us alone and let the market take its course. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.